What Angel Michael and Uriel did at the cross of Jesus, the two angels who terrified Lucifer. The cross was not quiet. It may have looked still to human eyes, but the unseen realm was shaking. As Jesus hung between heaven and earth, blood running down the wood, breath growing thin, all of creation held its breath. The sky darkened, the ground trembled, and time itself seemed to pause. This was not only the suffering of a man, this was the turning point of eternity. And heaven was watching. You were taught the cross as a place of pain, and it was. You were taught it as a place of love, and it is. But today, you are being drawn deeper into the mystery of what happened beyond what human eyes could see. Because while soldiers mocked and crowds jeered, while demons whispered and hell celebrated too soon, two mighty angels stood in holy silence. Michael and Uriel were there, not to rescue Jesus, not to stop the nails, but to enforce something far more terrifying than force, God's unbreakable will. This moment was not chaos, it was order, divine order. The Son was obeying the Father. The Father was redeeming the world, and heaven, though restrained, was fully present. Michael, the great warrior of God, whose very presence has sent armies of darkness fleeing, stood watch. Uriel, the bearer of divine fire and revelation, stood as witness. And Lucifer knew it. He felt it. The same serpent who once whispered lies in Eden now stood paralyzed by a truth he could not escape. The cross was not a trap for Jesus. It was a trap for him. Every drop of blood that fell was calculated in love. Every moment of silence was heavier than thunder. Hell expected angels to attack. Instead, heaven chose obedience. And that obedience terrified Lucifer more than any sword ever could. Because the enemy understood something many still miss today. If Jesus endured the cross willingly, then Satan's power was already ending. You are not listening to a story of myth or legend. You are standing at the center of the greatest spiritual confrontation that has ever taken place, and the same authority that stood at the cross still stands today. The same heaven that watched in awe then is watching now. This is not just history. This is the foundation of your faith, your freedom, and your victory. Number 1. The cross as a cosmic battleground. The cross was planted into the earth, but its impact tore through the heavens and reached into the depths of hell. This was not merely a Roman execution carried out on a Friday afternoon. This was the appointed hour written before time began. The wood stood on a hill called Golgotha, yet spiritually it stood at the center of the universe. Every realm was involved. Heaven was alert. Hell was agitated. Creation itself groaned under the weight of what was unfolding. When Jesus was lifted up, something shifted in the unseen. Darkness covered the land, not as coincidence, but as a sign. The sun itself refused to shine on the injustice taking place, and the earth trembled because it recognized its creator. This was the moment when sin, death, and redemption collided. The cross became a courtroom where divine justice and divine mercy met face to face, and no power in existence could remain indifferent. Lucifer did not stand far away. He was near, watching, calculating, hoping. He had entered Judas. He had stirred the crowd. He had moved the religious leaders. He believed he was orchestrating the greatest victory hell had ever known. The Son of God was bleeding. The Messiah was nailed. Heaven was silent. To Satan, silence meant abandonment. But to heaven, silence meant sovereignty. This was not a rescue mission. This was a fulfillment. The cross was the battlefield where God allowed evil to expend its full force, only to exhaust itself against divine purpose. Every accusation Satan had ever raised against humanity was being answered, not with arguments, but with blood. The law was being satisfied. The curse was being broken. The handwriting that stood against you was being nailed to the cross along with Christ. Angels filled the spiritual atmosphere, not in panic, not in confusion, but in reverent restraint. They understood something humanity could not yet see. If Jesus was removed from that cross, redemption would collapse. If the nails were pulled out, the chains of sin would remain. So heaven stood firm. The cross was not weakness. It was controlled power. And the enemy began to realize too late that this was not the place of Christ's defeat, but the place of his own undoing, just as it had been foretold in Scripture, recorded in the Bible. Number 2. Michael the Archangel, heaven's general standing watch. Michael did not rush forward with a sword. He did not descend in visible fire, but make no mistake. He was there, the great commander of heaven's armies, the one who had already driven Lucifer out of heaven, stood in absolute authority. His presence was not loud, but it was overwhelming. Michael is not known for speeches. He is known for obedience. And on that day, obedience was his greatest weapon. While demons circled the cross in rage and desperation, Michael stood as a divine boundary. Nothing was allowed to interfere with God's plan. Not one demon could touch Jesus beyond what was permitted. Not one force of darkness could end his life prematurely. The timing belonged to the Father alone. Michael enforced that timing. Heaven does not move emotionally, it moves precisely, and Michael embodies that precision. Lucifer remembered him. He remembered the war in heaven. He remembered the moment he was cast down, stripped of glory, defeated by loyalty rather than ambition. And now, seeing Michael again, standing watch at the cross, Satan understood something chilling. He was reliving his own judgment. The same obedience that defeated him before was now sealing his final loss. Michael's restraint was not passive. It was terrifying authority under control. The enemy expected interruption. He hoped for angelic rebellion, for divine intervention that would nullify the cross. But Michael knew the plan. If Jesus endured, humanity would be free. If Jesus finished the work, Satan's accusations would lose their power forever. So Michael stood firm, enforcing heaven's will with silent dominance. This is why the cross did not collapse under demonic pressure. This is why Jesus could declare with his final breath that it was finished. Heaven's general was on watch, and hell knew it could not cross that line. Number 3. Uriel, the angel of divine fire, truth and holy illumination. While Michael stood as the enforcer of heaven's authority, Uriel stood as the witness of heaven's truth. His name carries the weight of divine fire and revelation, the light of God that exposes, judges, and purifies. At the cross, Uriel's role was not visible to human eyes, but it was devastating to the kingdom of darkness. He was there to see clearly what Lucifer refused to accept. The cross was not chaos, it was clarity. Uriel is associated with divine understanding, with the unveiling of what God is doing when it appears hidden. As Jesus suffered, mocked, and bled, Uriel saw the full picture. He saw prophecy converging. He saw justice being satisfied. He saw mercy triumphing without compromising holiness. Every scream from hell, every insult hurled at Christ, only confirmed what heaven already knew. This sacrifice was irreversible. Lucifer thrives in deception. He twists perception, he blinds minds, but Uriel represents the light that cannot be corrupted. Standing at the cross, Uriel embodied the truth Satan feared most. Sin was being dealt with fully, no loopholes, no future accusations, no remaining legal ground. The fire of divine truth was burning away every false claim Satan had ever made against humanity. This is why the darkness that covered the land did not comfort hell. It disturbed it, because even in darkness, God was working in perfect light. Uriel saw the Lamb not as defeated, but as victorious through surrender. He saw the wisdom of God dismantling the pride of Satan, and that wisdom was unbearable for Lucifer to face. The cross exposed him. It revealed that his greatest weapon, death, was being turned against him. Uriel's presence declared something profound in the unseen realm. God was not reacting to evil. God was fulfilling his plan. And Satan was not watching a tragedy, he was witnessing his own unraveling. Number 4. Why Lucifer was not rejoicing at the cross. Lucifer wanted the world to believe he was celebrating. He wanted the illusion of victory to linger. But in truth, he was terrified. The cross forced him into a position he had always avoided, facing the consequences of God's faithfulness. He had gambled everything on killing the Son, believing that death would end the promise. What he did not understand was that death was the very door God intended to walk through. As Jesus endured the cross without retaliation, something began to dawn on Satan. This was not weakness. This was intentional submission, and submission to God has always been Lucifer's undoing. Pride had cast him down once, and now humility was destroying him completely. Every moment Jesus remained on the cross, the enemy's confidence eroded. Lucifer remembered the words spoken in Eden, that the seed of the woman would crush his head. He remembered every prophecy, every warning, every sign he had tried to distort. And now, as the blood of the Son soaked into the ground, he realized the truth too late. The curse he wielded over humanity was being broken at its root. The debt was being paid. The authority he abused was being reclaimed. Hell expected heaven to panic. Instead, heaven watched. Hell expected angels to strike. Instead, angels stood firm, and that restraint shook Lucifer more than violence ever could, because it told him that God was in complete control. The cross was not slipping out of God's hands. It was unfolding exactly as planned. When Jesus cried out and surrendered his spirit, Satan did not cheer. He recoiled, because in that moment, the enemy understood that the cross was not the end of Christ's power, it was the end of his own. The silence of heaven was not absence. It was judgment waiting to be revealed. Number 5. The silence of the angels and the obedience of heaven. The most unsettling thing for hell that day was not the suffering of Jesus, it was the silence of heaven. No trumpet sounded, no fire fell, no angelic charge descended from the skies, and that silence was intentional. It was holy. It was heavy with authority. Heaven was not hesitating, heaven was obeying. Angels exist to carry out the will of God, not to override it. And at the cross, the will of God demanded restraint. Every angel present understood the cost of interruption. One act of intervention would have unraveled redemption. One sword drawn too early would have left humanity bound forever. So heaven held its breath, not in fear, but in submission. Michael restrained the armies of heaven. Uriel bore witness in holy clarity, and countless angels stood in reverent awe, watching the Creator suffer for his creation. This obedience was not weakness, it was strength under control. The kind of strength Lucifer has never understood. Pride demands action. Obedience waits, and waiting in that moment was the most powerful act heaven could perform. This is where Satan's confusion turned into dread. He could not provoke heaven into reacting. He could not bait God into stopping the sacrifice. Every insult hurled at Christ, every mocking laugh from the crowd, every surge of pain Jesus endured only confirmed that the plan was advancing uninterrupted. Heaven was not reacting emotionally. Heaven was executing eternity. There are moments when God's greatest power is revealed, not in what he does, but in what he allows. The cross was one of those moments. Angels learned again that obedience to God's will releases salvation, even when it looks like loss. And that lesson still echoes into the lives of believers today. God's silence is never absence. Sometimes it is the sound of victory forming. Number 6. The moment the earth shook and hell knew it was finished. When Jesus declared, "It is finished," the unseen realm erupted. Those words were not whispered in defeat. They were announced in authority. The work was complete. The payment was full, and the universe responded. The earth shook because it recognized what had just happened. The veil in the temple tore from top to bottom, not by human hands, but by divine declaration. Separation was over. Access was restored. In that instant, hell understood what it had done. Lucifer realized he had crossed a line he could never uncross. The death he celebrated became the weapon that destroyed him. The grave he trusted became temporary. The cross he mocked became the throne of victory. Power shifted, authority transferred. The legal hold Satan had over humanity collapsed. Michael and Uriel witnessed the fulfillment of what heaven had known all along. The Son had finished the work. Justice was satisfied without mercy being compromised. The kingdom of darkness was stripped of its ultimate leverage, sin and death. The enemy still existed, but he no longer ruled. His dominion had been judged. The resurrection had not yet occurred in time, but it was already sealed in eternity. The cross was not waiting for confirmation. Heaven had accepted the sacrifice. Hell had lost its case, and the shockwave of that declaration rippled through every realm. Graves would soon open, chains would soon fall, hope would rise from what looked like finality. From that moment forward, nothing in the spiritual realm was the same. The cross had done what no angelic army ever could. It defeated evil by love, obedience and sacrifice, and hell has been trembling ever since. Number 7. What the presence of Michael and Uriel means for believers today. The cross was not only a moment for history, it was a revelation for your life right now. Michael and Uriel did not stand watch merely for that generation. Their presence declares something eternal. God never abandons his redemptive work, and he never leaves his children unguarded. If heaven stood in authority and restraint while salvation was being secured, then heaven is no less attentive while that salvation is being lived out in you. You are not fighting unseen battles alone. The same obedience that held angels still at the cross now empowers believers to stand firm in suffering, confusion, and spiritual warfare. Michael's example reminds you that authority does not come from noise, panic, or force, but from alignment with God's will. When you stand in obedience, even in silence, the enemy recognizes heaven's backing. Uriel's presence reminds you that truth is stronger than deception. Even when lies seem loud and convincing, God sees the full picture of your life, just as he saw the full picture at Calvary. When darkness tries to convince you that God is absent, that suffering means defeat, or that obedience is wasted, the cross stands as proof that God is always working beyond what you can see. The angels did not rescue Jesus from the cross, because the cross was the rescue for you. And that same wisdom applies today. There are seasons when God does not remove the trial because he is accomplishing something eternal through it. Heaven still honors obedience. Heaven still enforces divine timing. And heaven still stands watch over every soul redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. You are not forgotten. You are not defenseless. The cross settled that forever. Conclusion. Heaven still stands where the cross was raised. When you look at the cross, do not see abandonment, see authority. Do not see silence, see obedience. Do not see defeat. See the moment evil was undone. Michael and Uriel stood in holy reverence as love paid the ultimate price. Lucifer stood trembling, realizing too late that the cross was never his victory. It was his judgment. The same heaven that stood still that day now moves on behalf of those who belong to Christ. The same authority that restrained angels then now empowers believers to overcome. The cross is not only where Jesus died, it is where fear lost its grip, where sin lost its claim, and where hope was secured forever. And today, as you carry your own crosses, remember this: heaven knows exactly when to act, exactly when to wait, and exactly how to bring victory out of sacrifice. The story of the cross is not over. It lives in you. And heaven still stands watch.